Pictures, yeah.
Wait, and the pictures are, I don't know if we have them, but we'll bring them up tomorrow. They're so darling. I mean, really, they're adorable.
And there's an age gap between them, but I think when you see them together, you can't really pick up on that. They're happy.
And Anika, our producer, just said that Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry are dating too. Is it allegedly? Really? Wow, I hadn't heard that. Justin Trudeau, who used to date, actually used to be married to Jennifer Aniston, right? And Katy Perry and...
So we're talking a different Justin Trudeau. Are we talking the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau? Because that's where my mind went.
Yes. Okay, no, you're right. We need Anika to come out to the set because
those rumors were out there before.
Really?
Yeah.
This is the first I've heard of this. Okay. All right. We do have a rocket launch tomorrow, by the way. We were going to talk about that last 12:09 tomorrow afternoon. So 4 astronauts going up. That should be cool.
It'll be like a preview tomorrow on Good Day Orlando Extra.
And the governor will be there.
Pack your Birkin or Merkin. Be ready to go.
Merkin from Hermes.
Bye, guys.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Well, good morning to you and welcome into Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Weimer and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday morning live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is a busy morning here, and so I want to let you know what we are monitoring at this hour, and let's go ahead and jump right in. First, I want to give you a live look in Washington, D.C., where we are monitoring an NTSB hearing, holding a 3-day investigative hearing on the mid-air collision from January 29th. That was that collision between the Blackhawk helicopter and the American Airlines flight over the Potomac River. So we are monitoring this at this hour. It began a couple of hours ago, and again, expected to continue for 3 days. So we will check in on that in just a little bit. This is a live look outside Tampa Police Department, where we expect an update here any minute now on an officer who was shot near Busch Gardens in Tampa. This happened this morning. We're told the officer is in stable condition after making it through surgery. The suspect in this case, we have learned, is dead, believed to be from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It looks like this news conference is about to begin briefly, doing a microphone check right now, so we will check back in on that in just a minute. This is a live look inside Orange County Courthouse to begin deliberations any minute now. Lawrence Dority is charged with second-degree murder in connection with the death of Adreian Payne, a former Orlando Magic player. That shooting happened back in May of 2022, and Dority in this trial is claiming self-defense under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. So we will be on a verdict watch here very shortly. Also want to give you a live look also in Tampa at Hillsborough Academy of Math and Science there, where Governor Ron DeSantis is holding an education roundtable this morning. This is, I believe they're wrapping up soon. They are taking some questions right now. But the governor is with his education commissioner, Stacey Kamoutsas. The Florida Chief Financial Officer, Blazin Golia, is there, as is the president of the new College of Florida and the 2025 Florida Teacher of the Year. So a lot of things going on right now that we are monitoring, and we will go ahead and want to let you know we will bring the Tampa Police News Conference to you as soon as it begins. But right now I do want to go ahead and listen in inside the courtroom as the judge reads some final instructions to the jury ahead of deliberations beginning in the Lawrence Dority trial.
When you retire or when you return. During deliberations, jurors must communicate about the case only with one another and only when all jurors are present in the jury room. If a juror goes to the restroom, the deliberation...
No sooner do we do that than it looks like Tampa Police Chief Lee Burkall has walked up to the mic and is giving an update here. So let's go ahead and listen in. Again, this is a live update on a shooting involving an officer in Tampa this morning.
And provided life-saving resources. This situation could have been much worse. I'll walk you through some of the preliminary details of what happened. This morning, shortly before 8:15 in the morning, the subject came to this district office and spoke to our officer. They had what appeared to be a cordial conversation in the rear of the building between the fence in the back. At that point, the conversation appeared to be over. The officer turned and walked the other way, back towards the back door of the district, and he felt at that time that he had been shot on the leg. Officers immediately came to rush for assistance, put a tourniquet on his leg, and at that time the suspect fled across the street towards the rear area of Busch Gardens. Our officers immediately went over there and found him with a self-inflicted, or what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head. This time we're working to identify the suspect involved. We believe he's a 21-year-old male with minimal history. Our officer is a 40-year-old male, been on the department for 10 years. And as I said before, he's in good spirits despite what happened. Officers out here are protecting the community. And in this situation, this officer did a great job, and all of my officers did a great job. There is no threat to the community. As we said, we believe our suspect is deceased to a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Be happy to take any questions. Again, that's all part of the investigation. Clearly, we know that there's some type of mental health crisis going on because he shot himself. Originally, he was coming in wanting to complain about something, but the details of that are yet to be determined. At this point, it's too early to say. It's part of the ongoing investigation. You know, that's a possibility. That's all part of the investigation. Clearly, we're not going to be able to get a statement from him now, but those are all parts of the investigation.
Have you made contact with anyone who knew the suspect? You said you're still working on it.
Again, we haven't confirmed his identity. We're speaking to people that we believe were involved in him, but it's still all evolving, and I just don't want to release the wrong name. So the good news on Busch Gardens is he did not make it on the inside of the interior security footprint, and it's my understanding their operations are as normal, but they will be releasing a statement.
Did he head in a car on foot? Did he head that way towards that entrance?
Early investigation, but we believe he was all on foot. In the leg. At this point, we believe it was just once in the leg. Yes. Yes, he went through some preliminary medical treatment. I spoke to him at the hospital. He's in good spirits. He's actually joking around. I spoke to his daughter. He's got a young daughter, a 19-year-old. She was obviously very concerned. His wife was on the way. but they're all relieved that he's conscious and alert and that he's doing okay. Yes, we have body-worn camera. We also have surveillance camera that they're all combing through as we speak right now.
Was this officer, was he working here and, this suspect, did he buzz in looking to talk to somebody? Is that how it works?
So initially the officer came in the front, then went in the back. The suspect did. The officer is actually a school resource officer. During the summer, they're assigned to patrol duties because school's not in session. So this was a temporary assignment for our officer. Sure.
We're here to provide support for the Tampa Police Department, and we're so grateful that our officer is okay.
Chief, we saw some video just of how quickly it seems the response was. You had HSO here, obviously, your people. How important was it, and what does it show about your department and the surrounding departments about how quick the response was?
It shows, first of all, the Hillsborough County and the City of Tampa have the best trained law enforcement that work together at all functions, whether it's a crisis or whether it's a planned event like a parade. We all have great relationships, and the fact that they're there immediately, even law enforcement agencies from across the state, whether it's FDLE, FHP, St. Pete, Orlando, they've all reached out. We have a great community that all works together and supports one another. Our officer's name is Jordan Lawpert. Yeah, we'll provide it in the release for you. 40 years old, been here about 10 years. Assigned as a school resource officer, temporarily in the summer, placed on patrol.
Do you know what school he was assigned to?
Hillsborough. Hillsborough High. Thank you.
Tampa police wrapping up their news conference with an update on the officer who was shot this morning. Still some questions about what exactly led up to this. Police saying there was some sort of interaction between the suspect and the officer. Then the officer turned to walk away when he was shot in the leg, went through surgery in stable condition, going to be okay. Police talking about some sort of mental health crisis that they believe that suspect was going through because the suspect ended up shooting himself in the head. Police believe it is a self-inflicted gunshot wound there. So we are continuing to learn some more details about that. They say the officer in Tampa is in good spirits in the hospital right now and is going to be okay. We're going to take our first break here on Fox 35 News Plus, but we still have a lot to get to, a lot going on at this hour. So keep it right here on Fox Local. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Well, welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. I want to get you inside this roundtable going on at Hillsborough Academy of Math and Science in Tampa. See Governor Ron DeSantis there. They are taking some questions, talking about a variety of topics. I believe when I was listening in during the break, it sounded like they were talking about the mid-decade redistricting, the possibility of Florida doing that. Let's go ahead and listen to the governor as he speaks in Tampa.
Be resolved by the U.S. Supreme Court, because I do think the Trump administration is going to put in for a census that is not going to count foreign nationals, that is just going to count U.S. citizens. And that's really the way, I think that's what the founding fathers intended. I mean, they never really contemplated that you'd have a president that would intentionally allow all this people to come in without rule of law. But nevertheless, that's what we had to deal with for the past 4 years. So I think we did get shortchanged. Any way you cut it, we got shortchanged. Even if you put the illegal issue aside, we still got shortchanged with the way they did the calculations. And isn't it interesting? Everyone was forecasting Rhode Island was going to lose a seat, and they didn't. So little Rhode Island has 2 seats, so they didn't lose a seat. Well, come to find out, in Biden's administration, who was the Commerce Secretary? The former governor of Rhode Island. I mean, isn't that interesting that would have happened that way? So I just think that the analysis that even Biden's people had to put out showed without question that we should have a different count for the remaining of the decade. So we've had 2 elections under the current census. There's going to be 3 more elections, congressional elections, 26, 28, and 30, before the next census is done and the next maps are drawn. We could have a new map anyways in Florida, but if we got additional seat awarded to us, then we would be forced to draw. There would be no discretion at all, because we'd go from 28 to 29, maybe even to 30. You know, I had some people in the administration tell me they thought Florida would get like 3 to 5 more seats if they did it properly. Like, I haven't seen that analysis done, but I've had people tell me that. So clearly, and then also we're malapportioned because they stopped the count on April 1st of 2020. The Census Bureau did. I'm not saying that was like anything wrong with that, but that's just when the count stopped. But look what's happened since April of 2020. Look around Hillsborough County to see the growth. So there's some districts in this state where you have way more votes being cast than in other districts in these races. And you wonder, you know, how is it that ends up shaking out the way it does? So I do think that we're malapportioned within the state as well as malapportioned in the country. And the thing about it was, we had a presidential election last year where some people were saying that if Harris just won those Rust Belt states, that would be 270 to 268 if that had happened. So it would have been Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. And that would have been a huge crisis for this country, because people like me would have said, well, wait a minute, if you did the census properly, even her winning those 3 states would not have given 270. Trump would have had over 270 with a proper count, even if he didn't win any of those states. And so we really, now obviously he won all of them, it wasn't close, but I mean, we would have had a constitutional crisis in this country had it ended up settled into that. So let's get I hope that they redo the census. I think Florida would benefit if they redid the census, but even short of that, I do think that, you know, we're going to be looking at the pathways to be able to do the redistricting here in Florida. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you.
Governor Ron DeSantis, you see Blaise Ngolia, the state CFO, Richard Corcoran, the president of New College of Florida. To the left there, walking off the stage, you saw Stacey Koumoutsas, the education commissioner. Also, the 2025 Teacher of the Year was also part of this roundtable. Her name is Jamie Suarez. So that roundtable wrapping up, Governor DeSantis at the end there taking some questions and speaking about redistricting, which has certainly been a big topic lately. So we have been kind of monitoring that and seeing. Interesting to hear him talk about the malapportionment, what he believes at multiple levels, kind of within the state and then also within the country. Also talking about how, kind of talking about that idea of a count, a mid-decade census. We know that the state of Florida has grown a lot since 2020, and so that's the kind of fueling part of these conversations as well, including in the broader context as well of conversations about redistricting in Texas, California, some other states as well, as this just kind of a broader conversation about what needs to be done when it comes to redistricting and reapportionment as well in the nation. We are going to take a break here on Fox 35 News Plus. When we do come back, we will go ahead and get you caught up on these closing arguments in the Lawrence Dority trial. I can give you a live look inside the courtroom right now where we are on a verdict watch. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come back and get you caught up on what you missed in court this morning as we await for a verdict in the Lawrence Dority trial. So keep it right here on Fox Local and on YouTube. We'll be right back.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Live look right now inside the courtroom in Orange County, where a jury has just in the last 15 minutes or so retired to the deliberation room to begin deliberating and trying to decide on whether to convict or whether to acquit. We are talking about Lawrence Dority, a man who is charged with second-degree murder in connection with the killing of former Orlando Magic player Adreian Payne back in May of 2022. He is charged with second-degree murder. He could be convicted of a lesser charge of manslaughter, or the jury could rule that this was a justifiable homicide, and that is what the defense has tried to argue throughout this trial, that he was acting in self-defense, that he was afraid for his life, that he was afraid for his son and father's life as well. We did hear closing arguments this morning. That was the only thing left before the charging conference and before deliberations began. I want to play for you a portion of the prosecutor's closing argument as he talked about continuing to try and poke holes in the testimony of Lawrence Dority, who we did hear from on the stand yesterday, and also reiterating the point that they believe that no gun was found on Adreian Payne, according to the testimony of the responding officers to the scene. So this is the prosecution, Assistant State Attorney Michael Smith, making his closing argument just a little bit ago.
Carol Walker pled with the defendant not to take his gun out. She pled with him, don't take your gun out. Over again, don't take your gun out, Lawrence. We were asked to come here. She pleaded with him not to shoot Adreian Payne that night. But he didn't listen. Instead, he proceeded to take his gun out, take deadly aim, and shoot and kill Adreian Payne. It wasn't justified. It wasn't in response to a reasonable threat. It was just because he was intoxicated and he was mad. Not in the heat of passion that would be justified by law, but just because that's how he felt like, what he felt like doing that night. Now, you heard as part of protocol for when responding to a scene like this, a shooting, that he checked for weapons on the victim's person. And you can actually see on his body camera video that you saw that he did check both a pouch that the victim had on and as well as his pockets. No weapons. You also heard from CSI Hannah Miner, who testified yesterday morning as well. She was the lead CSI in the case, and she was in charge of documenting the entire scene, including the inside of the victim's vehicle. And you saw her documentation of that scene produced no firearm. And of course, you heard from Tara Walker, the victim in this case's girlfriend, the mother of his child. She told you that she responded to the area of the defendant's house after receiving a call from her best friend, Tatiana Mesa. That she then spoke with her boyfriend, Adreian, who said he was also en route there as backup to her. Now, you heard that she got there sort of just after Adreian had arrived and saw the defendant sort of walking away after apparently having words with Adreian going back into the house. You heard she had a brief conversation with him. He was going to move his car so she could fit to park on the street there. And then you heard that's when things took a turn. The defendant came back outside the house. He didn't stay in the house. He didn't lock the door. He didn't call 911. None of that. Instead, he arms himself with a firearm, taking the time to do that. He comes back out, and when Tara Walker sees him, she notices that he seems to have a gun. And she says, and you can hear on the audio, "Don't take your gun out. Lawrence, don't take your gun out. We were called here." But then she told you he didn't listen. He does take the gun out. You can hear the escalation in her voice. While you can't see the incident, you can hear it play by play from her voice on the video and the shots themselves. And you hear just after that, after he's been warned, after he's been told while they're there, you hear the shot ring out. And then you hear screams. Because the defendant had killed Adreian Payne for no justifiable reason. And you hear that in that surveillance. Now, you also heard from the medical examiner in this case, Dr. Marie Hansen. She told you about her extensive experience as a medical examiner since 1990. She told you about the autopsy she performed in this case. And she told you about the positioning of the victim's body when he was shot, that his arm would have had to have been up like this and to go through his torso for the shot. She said that was consistent with, and obviously she wasn't there, so she can't say specifically, but it was consistent with someone having their arm either perched on a door frame or on a steering wheel, just as Tara Walker said. She also said that based on the position, it's likely that the thumb was down. That's not a position that someone would be pointing a firearm, which we know that the victim in this case never had. Did the witness seem to have an accurate memory? Well, you heard his testimony as he said certain things with his counsel, but then when I questioned him about it, I said, well, it had been a long day, I'm not sure, I might not have said it. Did you find that to be credible? Was the witness honest and straightforward in answering questions? Well, he was barely audible when answering questions from his attorney, but he was at least cooperative. But then when I asked him questions, you saw his response, talking around the question, not giving me direct answers, having to be impeached multiple times with his previous statements. Did the witness have some interest in how the case would be decided? Well, no one that you heard from yesterday has more of an interest in how this case is decided than the defendant, obviously. Did you find his demeanor on the stand to be credible? Or did you see the tears, if there were any, to be crocodile tears that he was trying to force to gain sympathy from you? Did his testimony agree with the other evidence in the case? Well, no, it was in conflict with the testimony of Tara Walker, and that testimony of Tara Walker is corroborated by the video and the audio from the surveillance video. And did the witness at some point make statements inconsistent? Well, several times. I mean, just out of the door in his direct testimony, he said he had never been Mirandized. But then obviously he was impeached on the transcript of him being read Miranda. He said that he, didn't initially, so they didn't try to talk to the victim when he came back out. He didn't communicate with him. He shot him. That's what he said just after this murder. But then after watching all the evidence, he gets on the stand and says he came out there and was trying to, talk, please leave, please leave. First of all, I question that is the demeanor that he came out and was asking Mr. Payne to leave. But also, Adreian Payne was not on his property. He was on a street that was not even touching his property, and he didn't have any less of a right to be there than the defendant. He also said definitively, as you heard in his direct testimony, he definitely saw a gun, but he never said that in his initial statement. What he said is he thought he saw the outline of a gun. He's not sure, to be honest, he's not sure. That's what he originally said, but after hearing the evidence and realizing what needs to be said in order to convince you that he was somehow justified in his actions, that's what he said on the stand. But it's not consistent with what he said before, and it's not consistent with the facts and evidence in this case. The defendant in this case was not standing his ground. He was the aggressor. He was the person that initially approached a car parked on the street. This person wasn't knocking, on his door, wasn't standing on his lawn. He was sitting in his car with the window rolled up. He was the one that made even an initial contact. This was not an act of defense, and it certainly wasn't an act of reasonable self-defense. He took a life not to protect his own or to protect his family. He took it because he wanted to, because he was upset. His actions show a depraved mind, and he's guilty of second-degree murder. We ask that you convict.
That was the closing argument from the prosecution just a little bit ago. When we are going to take a break here on Fox 35 News Plus, when we come back, we will have the defense, a part of their closing arguments from a little bit ago as well. That was followed by a rebuttal case from a rebuttal argument from the prosecution as well. Meanwhile, we are still in verdict watch. It's been about 20 minutes or so since the jury first retired to begin deliberations. So we will keep an eye on this throughout the morning, throughout the afternoon, and the rest of the day here on Fox 35 News Plus. So keep it right here on Fox Local. We'll be right back after this.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Verdict watch continues inside the courtroom in the following the conclusion of the Lawrence Dority trial. The defense today, in their closing arguments, spoke for about 45 minutes. The defense attorney did, talking about a number of things, trying to argue that the testimony of Adreian Payne's girlfriend, Tara Walker, saying that testimony is unreliable, that she was never invited over to Dority's house. We also hear the defense attorney say that the medical examiner is inexperienced and makes claims about a gun that they believe Adreian Payne had on him. We heard testimony from Lawrence Dority yesterday where he said he believed Payne was carrying a gun, that he saw something silver, was talking about the way Payne was kind of holding his shirt and his hands when he first confronted him. They are making the claim that gun may have been removed by someone else on the scene. This is the closing argument, or at least a portion of the closing arguments from the defense attorney representing Lawrence Dority, talking about why they believe this shooting was in self-defense.
Evidence revealed that neither Mr. Lawrence Dority or Lawrence Dority's fiancée, Tatiana Mesa, invited Mr. Payne over. You didn't hear from Tatiana. You didn't hear that from her mouth, that she invited Tara over. Where's the text message? You remember that? Tara Walker wants you to believe she was texted by Miss Tatiana Mesa to come over. Did you see a text message? Where's the proof? The evidence showed that even Miss Tara Walker advised her boyfriend, Mr. Payne, not to go over to Mr. Dority's house. She admitted to that fact. But why? Why was he there? Why was she there? The crime scene was contaminated. And I'm going to expound upon that a little bit later. That's very important. It's so very important to this case. Fatal to the state's case. It's fatal to the state's case. There was evidence that was not properly secured and processed. Tara Walker's testimony is not credible. There's inconsistency in the state's case. There's lack of evidence in the state's case. And when you go through the jury instructions, that is a factor that tends to go towards reasonable doubt. When there's inconsistency in the evidence, lack of evidence, inability of witnesses to recall what happened, you know. Mr. Dority's actions were justified under the circumstances of this case, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Dority was standing his ground. So at some point during the verbal altercation, Tara Walker arrives. Mr. Payne actually walks up to her car. And at some point, she tells him to get back in the car and move his car up some more, closer to the house. But do you remember what Tara said? That when she first arrived, that the first person she talked to was Larry Dority, Mr. Lawrence Dority's father. And what did Mr. Larry Dority say to her? Tara, get back. I'm about to go get my gun. Now, if it wasn't a threat that appeared imminent or of some sense of seriousness, that's consistent. Use your reasonable inferences. You're allowed to use reasonable inferences. So that's one fact that's admitted by the state's own witness. The state has proven the defense's case. When Tara Walker pulled up, Larry Dority told her to get back. I'm about to get my gun. She said, no, don't do that. That's my son's father. That's my boyfriend. Oh, I've never seen him before. That's a big fella. A reasonable person would do after having an argument out outside of someone's home that you don't have a right to be at 1:30 in the morning? And when that person gets ready to go in the house, after you threaten the person and he goes in the house, by the time he comes back out, you should be gone. But guess what? He moved up a little bit closer. And guess what? Mr. Dority's son was still outside, who was 9 years old at the time, 8 or 9, give or take. His dad was 62 years old. There's inconsistency in the evidence, ladies and gentlemen. He did a brief search of Mr. Payne's fanny pack. He did not see any weapons in there, but he did not search the vehicle at all. You ever had Thanksgiving dinner that was so nasty that you had to sprinkle a little sugar on it to make it taste good? That's what this tastes like. That's what this is. No. Don't let them force feed you. If it's nasty, it's nasty. You know, Tara has a motive to not be honest in this situation, because you know what this is? When Mr. Dority arrived home and he approaches the vehicle that he was familiar with at one point, believing it to be Tara Walker, but unknown to him, a 6'8", 247-pound man steps out and, in a threatening manner, steps over to him and say, "I'll smoke you. What you want to do?" That's an aggravated assault with a weapon. That's a felony, a forcible felony. And if Tara Walker invited him over to do that, that means she conspired with Adreian Payne to commit a forcible felony of aggravated assault. Use reasonable inferences, ladies and gentlemen. So let's talk about Hannah Minor, the crime scene investigator. She, at the time of this incident, May 9th, 2022, she had only been employed, as a crime scene investigator for 4 months. She had just started January 2022. So she's 4 months in on the job, relatively inexperienced. And it technically shows, because the role of a crime scene investigator is to respond to the crime scenes, document the crime scenes with photos, notes, sometimes measurements, document evidence, collect evidence, process that evidence, package that evidence, forward that evidence to its final location, whether it's in a laboratory or evidence unit, and write reports of their involvement in those cases. And of course, they work in conjunction with law enforcement and detectives. This is her exact testimony, right? It's from my notes, right? But she failed to document and process, collect that knife. She didn't dust for prints. She testified that it can be done, and case by case it can be done. She didn't try to get any touch DNA. She testified that she can do that. It's case by case. So in a case like this, a homicide, an allegation, and someone died, that's not something where you think that's important to dust. She agreed that it can be a weapon. It is a weapon. The state wants you to believe that my client just comes out the house, guns blazing, just shooting at someone for no reason, in cold blood, without adequate provocation, without it being in fear, just willy-nilly. Use your common sense. That's not what happened. And it's not the defense's job to show you things that it's not even, it didn't happen. The video that the state showed you doesn't even show the actual, it doesn't show any body, any person in any frame. All you hear, it's a video of audio. It's a video of audio. They didn't. How about this, if this don't convince you? When Mr. Dority testified and the defense rests, the state didn't even put on a rebuttal witness, no rebuttal evidence. They haven't rebutted self-defense. Their own case established self-defense, arguably. And after hearing from Mr. Dority, who refuted that? Tara wasn't there when he first encountered Mr. Payne. Now, I imagine what may be troubling you guys is that there was actually no gun found in the car. But it's a reasonable explanation for that. You know why there was no gun found? Because the gun that he had was removed. Either by Tara, her brother, or somebody
Objection, facts not in evidence.
That's a reasonable inference.
Overrule.
You are allowed to make reasonable inferences based on the facts.
I was the defensive attorney for Lawrence Dority, trying to sow some of that reasonable doubt within the minds of the jury. In fact, he began his closing argument by talking about reasonable doubt and doubt that the jury may have, questions they may have in this case. In fact, the prosecutor did have to object at one point to his definition of it because it was different from what was actually in the law and in the jury instructions. But to his point, he's just trying to raise all of these questions and see what may stick with the jury when it comes to that reasonable doubt. So we are watching for a verdict in this case. We will continue to monitor things in the courtroom as we await a decision from the jury on that. We're going to take a break here on Fox 35 News Plus, but we will be right back after this. Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Jessica Dobson joins me now. And Jess, a bit of a scary situation when we're talking about this earthquake and the tsunami watches and warnings we've seen.
Yeah, so this happened yesterday afternoon and evening, so it was around 7:30 Eastern time that there was this massive earthquake. This is actually tied for the 6th strongest in history ever since they've started recording earthquakes. It was an 8.8 magnitude, and that level and that strength of an earthquake off the east coast of Russia, that had triggered, tsunami warnings and advisories that stretched all the way for thousands of miles. So it was about 3,100 miles away from Hawaii and about 3,500 miles away from much of the west coast of the United States. And it was a very powerful earthquake, and we were really watching out for, significant damage from the tsunami. And so far, it looks like the most significant of the reports were taking place across parts of Hawaii. So far, it's still dark there, but as high as I've seen in terms of the amounts and the height of the wave and that tsunami wave, that surge of water, has been around 6 feet. So it hasn't been too much in the way of, originally we were thinking, some of the forecast models were saying as high as 10 feet in some spots. But so far, they still do have a tsunami advisory in place. According to the governor of Hawaii, he says the worst is over. They did pick up, some of the tsunami. Some of it was as high as 4 feet, some in almost 6 feet in some spots. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Also, there are still some tsunami advisories in place for much of the west coast of the United States, and a small stretch of Northern California is still under a tsunami warning. So I have a feeling they'll likely downgrade that here soon because it looks like a lot of the threat is starting to subside a bit, and looks like the worst now for the west coast of the U.S. is just about over as well. This took place while many of us late last night were sleeping in terms of the tsunami threat itself, but when it comes to the reports, again, about 5.7 feet. That's going to be really in Hawaii. A lot of the reports are from Hawaii that we have so far. These were the ones I've been able to find so far. Still pretty early, of course, so we'll likely get more numbers in. But we did get one report out of California, and it looks like there's been a couple more that have come in right around this number, around 1.5 to 1.6 feet in terms of that tsunami there. So it's so far there hasn't been, significant damage. We have had some cameras across parts of Honolulu and the islands there, and so far so good. So hopefully that can continue to be the case. I know obviously closer to Russia and parts of Japan, they have seen a little bit more in the way of intense damage there. Obviously, since it's an 8.8 magnitude, that's to be expected. But yeah, it's certainly a scary situation, and so far we'll continue to keep you posted as far as more updates go throughout the rest of today and beyond. But we are going to talk about today's forecast too, because it's going to be another hot day for us here in Central Florida. We have our own alerts in terms of heat alerts. We did have an excessive heat warning, or extreme heat warning yesterday. That is a level down, or a level up from this heat advisory, which is a level down, I should say. That's going to be what we have in place for today. So bottom line, today is not going to be nearly as hot and humid as what we've been seeing the last couple of days, but it's still going to be dangerously hot. So we're still expecting a high of 97 degrees. It's going to feel closer to around 108 to 112. The hottest, the most uncomfortable of the temperatures will be taking place starting at noon today and will last through about 7 p.m. So taking you through the next 12 hours, we will be expecting those temperatures to go from the upper 80s throughout the late morning hours, and then into the midday hours, we'll start to approach the low 90s before eventually topping out at 97 degrees. And you'll also see that we do have some shower and storm chances on the way too. Yesterday, we picked up a good amount of rain across some parts, and we actually had severe thunderstorm warning. We had some flash flood warnings. Some parts of Lake County picked up an upwards of around 5 inches of rainfall over a short span of time. So we're going to see more of that today, likely a bit of a higher chance of rain. So more of us likely seeing more of the showers and storms today. So 50% chance. We saw about a 40% chance yesterday, just for some perspective for you there. High temperatures, though, will be in the mid-90s as opposed to the upper 90s and even the low 100s. A couple spots did reach that century mark yesterday afternoon, so we'll be closer to the mid-90s today. But still, it's going to be hot. 97 is going to be our high today in Orlando. Same for Bithlo, Titusville, also into Leesburg. 98 in Sanford, so that's likely going to be one of the hotter spots today. 94 in Cocoa Beach, 93 in New Smyrna, and 96 degrees your high today in Daytona Beach. So it's going to be another hot one, yes, above normal. Our usual highs, 92 degrees. But yeah, this is, even hot by Florida standards, yes, but we're starting to come a little bit closer to what we would normally see on a hot day across the region. So our forecast heat index, this is going to be an estimate of our heat indices as we head into the afternoon hours. So that's what it feels like once we factor in the humidity, which of course we know that's what makes us different here in Florida than versus out west, say, Arizona, the desert Southwest. We have the humidity, so that's why it does make it harder for our bodies to cool off, and it's just harder for our bodies to manage that level of heat when we have this level of humidity too. So we're looking at those feels like temperatures as high as, say, 109 to 112, maybe even 113 for a couple of spots out there. So just make sure you take it easy, wear the loose, light clothing. Try to limit your time outside. Also, just try to make sure that you do have a way to stay cool with some air conditioning if you have to work outside, because I know we have linemen, we have construction workers, we just have people outside who can't avoid the heat. So if you can make it through yesterday, we've got another day that's not going to be quite as bad, although it's probably going to feel pretty similar. I know yesterday we had feels like temperatures in Tampa specifically. I know it made it up to about 119 in terms of how hot it felt. We had some reports out of Claremont about 120 is what it felt like outside. So we're not going to quite reach that level, but we will have some relief in terms of showers and storms today. Although it's going to be one of those setups where it's going to rain, and once the rain clears out, the sun comes back out, we'll have some short-lived relief once it rains, but once that sun comes back out, it's going to be, just sweltering and steamy once again with just how hot it's going to feel once that rain has fallen. So as far as the rest of today is concerned, we're going to be expecting, a mostly dry start to the early afternoon. I do think we'll start to see a couple of these showers and storms begin to bubble up by noon, 1 o'clock. And these are going to be really isolated to start off with. So we're not going to be expecting widespread rain. But when it rains and these downpours form, we'll likely see a lot of thunder and lightning, some gusty winds, and some of that heavy rainfall, especially for any of these slow-moving downpours. For the most part, these will kind of wash and rain themselves out, but they will play, bumper cars again and kind of help to spark additional showers and storms. So looking ahead towards around 6 p.m., we'll start to see more of those downpours, and these will continue to stay pretty scattered, very hit and miss. Doesn't look like we have one concentrated area that's going to have a better chance of rain versus others. And then as we get closer towards, say, around midnight to 1 a.m., we start to see a little bit of a reprieve, and a lot of these showers and storms will lose their steam, and that will give way to drier conditions, I would say, especially by about midnight, 1 a.m., a lot of these will clear out. So kind of similar to like what we saw late last night. When it comes to our rain chances, though, for the rest of this week, a big takeaway is the fact that we're going to see more of our typical rounds of showers and storms through about Friday. But as we head towards the weekend, we'll be monitoring our next system, which could come in the form of a front. And that front may stall out across parts of northern Florida specifically, and that could help to bring additional rounds of showers and storms, and it also could play a role in our tropics, which we'll talk more on in a moment too. But we're looking at upwards of a 70% chance of rain as we head towards about Sunday and into Monday, so early parts of next week, regardless if there's a system out there brewing or not. So as of right now, the National Hurricane Center has not outlined anything in terms of areas of concern when it comes to the tropics. So no tropical development is expected for the next 7 days. Now that being said, there are a couple of tropical waves we've been monitoring, so we'll keep a close eye on those because we could see something try to get going off of that front that's going to try and stall out across the southeast this weekend, whether that's on the east coast or the west coast into the Gulf, will play a big factor in terms of what kind of impacts we're going to see for us here in Florida and just what forms as a whole. But the thing is, we've had these multiple waves in terms of these tropical waves. They just have not had a very good environment to work with. They've had this dry Saharan dust. We've also got some hostile upper winds, meaning wind shear. So we know hurricanes and just tropical systems as a whole, they need moisture and they need the wind shear to be on the lower side. Otherwise, the system gets kind of ripped apart. It becomes much more disorganized. But as of lately, at least for the first week or so of August, it looks like we're going to have a pretty big plume, a large plume of Saharan dust that's going to continue to work its way across the Atlantic. It will get here eventually for us, and we've still been kind of hazy out there, but it's thinned out quite a bit for us. But it looks like it's going to return some as we get closer towards Sunday, Monday. Now, that being said, how long this is going to stick around for is going to be a big factor in the forecast as well, whether we can see some of these waves that typically form right there along the south central Atlantic. That's where we start to see some of these tropical systems form, and it's right around this time of year that we see that take place. You'll notice too, the dust does thin out some, and we are going to continue to watch and monitor where some models try to say that these systems have enough moisture left over so that where they can still get going and work their way closer to the U.S. or just closer to the Caribbean as a whole, and they can just keep themselves together. But as of right now, chances are still low. That would take place likely the second week or so of August, so still about a week at least out, if not maybe even 2 weeks from anything of worth mentioning and talking about could take place. So that's just the latest when it comes to the tropics there. Again, Saharan dust is going to help to keep a lid on things for us, keeping us on the drier side in terms of the atmosphere there. But when it comes to us at home and our 7-day forecast, we are going to be expecting those rain and storm chances to pick up slowly but surely. We're looking at around a 60 to 70% chance of rain. Again, that's going to be due to that front moving in Sunday and into Monday, and it's going to kind of stall out there. Temperatures, as a result, are going to be a little bit lower. Not a ton of improvement, not as much as what we would like in terms of relief, but still high of 95 for Saturday and Sunday, 94 for Monday and Tuesday. So better than what we have been seeing. So we'll take whatever relief we can get, but still it's going to be a hot start to the month of August, that's for sure.
Yeah, still above average.
Yes, we are overperforming, that's for sure in Florida. It is July, so that's we are certainly overachieving to say the least. But at least today, I do think today and the next couple of days, we're going to likely not come close to any sort of records, and we may approach the upper 90s in a few spots, but not nearly as intense as what we've seen the last couple of days.
Okay, good. Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Jessica Dobson, we appreciate you joining us. And here's a live look at downtown Orlando right now. It even looks hot out there, so stay cool if you have to be outside. Well, that is going to wrap up our 11 o'clock hour here on Fox 35 News Plus. We're getting ready to take a break, but we'll come back with more coverage because we still have a lot we're watching. The NTSB hearing that we will get you to, also expecting to hear from Chuck Schumer talking about the Epstein files, and of course we are still on verdict watch. So keep it right here on Fox Local. Much more to come.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. Several things we are monitoring at this noon hour here. The first is what you're seeing in the big picture there. That is an NTSB hearing, a 3-day investigative hearing about this mid-air collision that happened January 29 over the Potomac River when an American Airlines flight and an Army Blackhawk helicopter collided over the Potomac River, not far from the DCA airport, the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. So we will listen into that. We are also waiting on U.S. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer getting ready to hold a news conference talking about the Jeffrey Epstein files. So we will listen into that as well. Meanwhile, we are on verdict watch in the Lawrence Dority trial, which has been going on this week in Orange County. He is charged with a second-degree murder. And the jury has been deliberating for a little less than an hour. So we will certainly keep an eye on that throughout the afternoon. So let's go ahead and listen in to this hearing in Washington, D.C. from the NTSB.
Cross-check of radio altitude to determine what altitude I was at that point.
And that's assuming you knew it?
Assuming I knew that ahead of time, yes.
Right, okay. Do you think you should know those things?
Can you clarify exactly which things?
Sorry. Do you think, sorry about that. You think you should know where those, that if you're operating at such low altitude, do you think you should know when there's only 75 feet and your max altitude is 200 feet?
Yes, I would very much like to know that.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for your responses. For the Army, have you looked anywhere else in the national airspace to see if this sort of, oh, I'm over time. I'm so sorry. I will add 2 minutes to their time. We'll go on to Member Graham, add 2 minutes to theirs.
Not a problem.
I'll just let you go over.
Okay. Ms. Lewis, you pretty much have said that when an Army pilot begins a hover of their aircraft, that they are looking at the radar altimeter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there an altitude after the hover as you depart the field or where you take off from that you transition to barometric altimeter?
In my experience, it's not a set altitude, but as I'm climbing out of the airfield and once I'm no longer at a hover, generally I'll start referencing my barometric altimeter more heavily than I would have been before.
Okay. Is there a set altitude where a helicopter pilot in the Army should be transitioning to a radar altimeter?
There's no exact set altitude, but anytime I'm conducting, say, terrain flight 200 feet or below, I would generally be referencing my radar altimeter.
200 feet or below would,
yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that's just in my experience.
Your experience, okay. How do Army pilots ensure obstacle and terrain clearance while flying the Washington routes or at a low altitude?
In my experience, I've never personally flown the Washington helicopter routes.
Okay. Mr. Bradham, have you flown the routes?
I have not, sir, but I know on subsequent panels you have an Army witness who's very experienced. He's a standardization instructor pilot for that
I'll
unit.
ask him those. But in your experience, Ms. Lewis, how do you keep obstacle clearance or terrain clearance while flying at low altitude? What altimeters are you using?
My radar altimeter.
Your radar altimeter. Okay. I assume you both have seen the Washington routes and their barometric routes.
Garrett Weimer here. We appreciate you monitoring all this with us here on Fox 35 News Plus this afternoon. I do want to get you back inside the courtroom where we are on a verdict watch. The jury does have a question. They've been deliberating for close to an hour now, and they have a question. They're going to have something read back to them from the transcript. So let's go ahead and listen back in to the courtroom as the jury continues to deliberate in the Lawrence Dority trial, and we'll see what it is that they have a question about. So let's go ahead and listen back in as they come back inside the courtroom.
All right, go ahead and have a seat. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I did receive a question from you all that indicates that you want to be provided with the time the officer, I believe that was Corporal Morris, who testified first, arrived at the scene, and it is signed and dated by the foreperson. You have to rely upon the evidence that was provided during the trial. I did have the court reporter locate that information in the transcript, and so she's going to read to you as part of a readback the question and the answer as it relates to that question, okay?
Question, and did you have occasion on that day around 1:30 a.m. to respond to 1529 Egret Shores Drive in Orlando? Answer, yes, I did.
All right, that's the only evidence that we have that was provided as it relates from Corporal Morris that's responsive to the question, okay? All right, so you're free to go back and continue your deliberations at this time. All right, go ahead and have a seat. All right, we will be in recess again until such time as we have a question or a verdict. Again, remain within 10 to 15 minutes walk or return to the courtroom. All right, thank you all.
Court is in recess after the jury had a question. You see Lawrence Dority there inside the courtroom as his defense attorney talks with the prosecutor. The question was about the time the officer arrived at the scene that night, early into the next morning, I should say. So They were reread part of the transcript that didn't have an exact time, but told them around 1:30 or so. So we are back on verdict watch in the Lawrence Dority trial in Orange County. We are still standing by waiting for Senator Chuck Schumer to talk during his news conference about the Epstein files and this NTSB hearing continuing in Washington, D.C. as well about the mid-air collision in January. So let's go ahead and listen back in.
There are other modern Sikorsky helicopters that also have that miscompare capability. In the analog era of the Blackhawk and even the original 76 when it was analog, that capability couldn't be implemented because the hardware means didn't support it.
Okay. This aircraft, I believe, was delivered in 2000. Am I correct on that?
2001.
2001. Are they still making the Lima model?
It is not in production, no.
When was the last year Lima was made? Lima was.
I don't have that date.
Okay. Does the Army have a plan for phasing out Lima models?
Yes, sir. We have a divestiture plan for the Limas that's currently ongoing, and so the plan is to replace the Limas with the Mikes because they are much more capable, as you've alluded to.
What's the average life of a Lima model?
Since they came into service 1989 or so, right?
Yeah, the first Lima was delivered in October of 1989.
And do you know what the average life that the Army is getting out of the Lima?
I can provide that data. The specific data is post this investment. I don't have it in front of me now.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you very much. I see my time's up.
Member Inman.
Thank you, Chair. And Mr. Rosengren, I'm going to start with you. And I will start with this. I thought I was going to be much more frustrated by the second panel, but I'm already that way. So I'm going to ask a very simple question. You just said you don't know the divestiture schedule for these models, correct?
No, sir. We know the divestiture schedule. What we don't have, I don't have the data in front of me, is the average life of the Limas. We can get that down to you by tail number.
But earlier you said your only plan right now, based on the work that these experts have done and the research, your plan is that you hope in 2 weeks is to update something in a manual for them to tell them about this discrepancy? That's the only update you plan?
No, sir. We've asked our airworthiness organization to give us a recommendation. Once we get that recommendation, if it is determined to be a risk, we hold a system safety working group, which has user representations, safety representation, PM representation, and that safety body, independent safety body, will make a recommendation to the PM and the program executive office, which will be.
Okay, hang on a second. What are you going to do in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, we'll get back the analysis from our airworthiness organization, the System Requirements Directorate.
So you don't even know if you're going to make any changes based upon the research we've already done?
So when we get the data back, then we will take that recommendation from our independent airworthiness organization, and then we will take appropriate steps.
Who is your independent airworthiness organization?
The System Requirements Directorate is the independent airworthiness organization that Mr. Bradham works for under the Aviation and Missile Command, which is a separate command, a separate four-star command that ultimately reports up to different change.
So I guess the bigger question is, are you telling me right now then from what
Looks like that Chuck Schumer news conference we've been waiting on is getting ready to begin. Let's go ahead and get you live to Capitol Hill, where he is talking about the Epstein files. Let's hear what he has to say.
On the Homeland Security Committee call on the executive branch must comply. Our request covers all documents, files, evidence, and other materials in possession of the DOJ, the FBI, related to the case of the United States versus Jeffrey Epstein. While protecting the victims' identities can and must be of top importance, the public has a right to know who enabled, knew of, or participated in one of the most heinous sex trafficking operations in history. Let me remind everyone of what's happened in recent months. Donald Trump campaigned on releasing the Epstein files. He broke that promise. In February, FBI Director Kash Patel promised during sworn testimony in his confirmation hearing he would, quote, make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened. Well, that has yet to happen. A.G. Bondi said in February that his supposed, quote, client list, she said, was sitting on her desk right now to review. And she said that's been a directive by President Trump. 5 months later, we have zero answers, only more questions. What have we gotten since? Stonewall, evasion, lies. Trump was asked earlier this month if he had ever been informed whether or not he was mentioned in the None of that is possible if the public loses faith that justice only applies to some, not all. Senator Peters has taken a great lead on this issue as ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm proud to call on him to speak.
Thank you, Chuck. Well, thank you, Chuck. You know, the American people want and deserve transparency from their elected officials. On the campaign trail, President Trump promised many times to deliver that transparency by making the records in the Jeffrey Epstein case public. And now he is going back on that promise. This kind of reversal is what leads to distrust of elected officials. It also, we all know, it breeds conspiracy theories and misinformation. But the solution is very clear. Americans deserve transparency from congressional Republicans and the Trump administration. Our Republican colleagues are failing to conduct independent oversight of the administration and call for this information to be made public. Some have even publicly said they want to provide, and this is a member of the U.S. Senate, a Republican member, who said that they wanted to provide, quote, cover. Republican senators said it. They want to provide cover to President Trump after his reversal. And that's why my Homeland Security Committee Democratic colleagues and I are pressing the Justice Department to produce files related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. We are using very unique statutory authority that is granted only to our committee, to Homeland Security and Government Affairs. The statute that we are invoking requires the administration to hand over documents requested by any 5 members of the Senate committee. This letter demands that the Justice Department produce documents that Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Akash Patel have publicly already confirmed they have in their possession. We all know, in fact, that the Attorney General said, quote, she said, they're sitting on her desk. It should be pretty easy to turn over documents that are sitting on the Attorney General's desk. It's certainly disappointing that we have to take this action to hold President Trump to his word, but we believe that providing this transparency is what is best for the American people. Joining me on that letter and also working in his own right as the ranking member of the Permanent Subcommittee of Investigations as part of my committee is Richard Blumenthal.
Thank you, Gary. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. I want to thank, first of all, Senator Schumer for his leadership and Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Peters, for taking the lead here as well. This letter has the force of law. This letter invokes a statute that has been little used because it has been unnecessary in the past to enforce transparency. It's necessary now because this administration is stonewalling and stalling and concealing. And the American people are rightly asking, what do they have to hide? What's at stake here is not just the president's promises, although they are absolutely clear when he said, quote, President Trump says he will declassify the 9/11 files, JFK files, and Epstein files, end quote. That's President Trump. What's at stake here is more than the president's promises. It's the credibility of our justice system and the question whether there was proper criminal prosecution, whether it was complete and full, whether it was accurate, and what additional facts the American people are entitled to know. What's at stake is also the victims. This crime by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell was not a victimless crime. It was not just about money laundering. It was not just about lying to the government. It was about exploiting women, in fact, girls. Girls who were mercilessly and repeatedly subject to abuse and trafficking. And that is why the American people have a right to know who else was involved, whether the system really was rigged in favor of the rich and powerful, which is what the suspicion has been on the part of a lot of the president's supporters and why they so enthusiastically greeted his promises of full disclosure. He's broken those promises. We're going to enforce the law to make him fulfill his commitments to be transparent and full in disclosure. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. We'll take questions on this subject first. Yes.
Would this law compel information that's under grand jury seal by the courts to be released to the committee? And are there other things that could be redacted, law enforcement?
Yeah, look, there can be redactions, and we're not going to break. Whoa, are you okay? We're not going to force any agreements that have been broken, but we believe almost everything can come out, barring any. Well, that'll have to be litigated. Yes.
Would you accept the Justice Department limiting the reading of these files to leadership or members in a...
I think they should be made public. I mean, certainly to the Congress and to the public. The public has a right to know.
Including the interviews that were done recently with Maxwell in the last couple of days. All the notes that were taken, any recordings, should be made public as well. And, you know, the redactions that Senator Schumer mentioned are standard operating procedure in the Department of Justice when it does a report based on an investigation. It's rare, but it's not unusual.
Yeah.
When the Justice Department...
Go ahead. You both can go. Do you want to go at once? We'll answer to. Go ahead. He goes first.
If they don't respond to your request, is there any enforcement mechanism? Is there any way for you guys?
Well, our hope is that our Republican colleagues will join us in this. This is a law. This has been made. It should be bipartisan, and we're still, Gary, we're still talking to Republican colleagues about trying to join us, and that may help get this public. But if not, there's recourse in the courts. This is the law. Yes.
How can Democrats, as the minority, take this to the courts?
We have talked to some of our lawyers, and this can be challenged in the courts.
Yeah.
Yes.
After the horrific shooting in New York and a police officer was killed, do you think it's a bad look for
Senator Booker to be objecting to police and law enforcement related?
Look, Senator Booker has strong beliefs on this issue. He's had them for a very long time. He believes in strong law enforcement. Yes.
Some of your Democratic colleagues have talked about making an amendment to the minibus related to the Epstein files. Will you use that for the negotiations that are going on to try to push Republicans?
Look, we on the initial minibus, we are running a hotline right now. Okay? Yes.
Emil Bovee was confirmed last night, even after a number of whistleblowers came forward, including some at the 11th hour. But what do you think this means going forward for future whistleblowers who are thinking about?
I think I said it was one of the low points, not only in this Congress, but in the history of Congress, to put a man like this in such an important position as a circuit court judge. It's a disgrace. He doesn't belong there. And our Republican, he only had one qualification. He'd do whatever Trump wants. That's a horrible qualification for a judge. Yes?
Thanks, Leader. What do you make of reporting that Republicans in the White House are lobbying against a stock trading ban in Congress here?
We Senate Democrats are for a stock trading ban. Okay? Thank you, everybody. Do you want to? Go ahead,
And
Gary.
we just passed it out of committee before this meeting here, and on a bipartisan basis.
And do you have any comment on Senator Hawley and Scott kind of going back and forth arguing about it?
It was a spirited committee hearing, but the end result was that we passed it out and it now moves to the full Senate.
And
Thank you, everyone. Go ahead, Dick. Go ahead.
And thanks to Senator Hawley for championing this cause.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. I thank Senator Blumenthal and Senator Peters for championing this.
Just looking for hands.
Thank you for that.
At a news conference with Chuck Schumer wrapping up there, where he talked about using the rule of 5 to try to get the Epstein files released. That is a rule that would that requires government agencies to release information to them if 5 members of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee request it. So trying to use that to force the hand and get those documents released. Let's go ahead and listen back in as this NTSB hearing continues about the D.C. mid-air collision. So let's get you back inside as this hearing continues. Again, we are on the verdict watch as well in the Lawrence Dority trial. So something else we are monitoring this afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on Fox Local.
Is in a personal sense, I used to live at 400 Army Navy Drive when this crash occurred. I looked out over the Pentagon, DCA. Chair and I stood on runway 33 the night that this accident happened. I moved to McLean specifically so I wouldn't have to face that and my wife wouldn't have to see me wake up in the middle of the night. Whenever I moved to McLean, though, I found out after being there the last 2 weeks, I'm on one of your flight paths over 495. Over the last weekend, 5 of those Limas flew behind my house. And you're telling me it's going to be 2 months before you tell them that there's a discrepancy in their altitude? Could you hurry it up?
Yes, sir. We would do, that's a worst case scenario. We'll do everything to exceed that time frame.
How about telling them now?
We are in public testimony, and so we have put it out there in public testimony.
I hope every Army aviator is not having to watch the NTSB.gov live stream to figure out that there's a discrepancy in their altitudes of the planes that are flying around us. Sorry for my frustration. For Sikorsky, how many of these Lima models are still in operation around the world?
Sorry, I don't have that number. I'd have to. I cannot answer the Army numbers, and we'd have to go back to determine our international operators.
Could you please?
Okay.
How many were manufactured with this variant, I guess, is a good question. How many are still operating with a certificate?
Yeah, we'll find out. We can get the answer to both.
Okay. Has Sikorsky received any reports of conflicting altitude readings elsewhere outside of the military?
No, the answer is no. I requested information from our database and went through it, and I did not see any reports as such.
How much does a Lima model, how much did you sell a Lima model for?
I'm sorry, I'm engineering. I don't know the cost data.
Okay, can someone from the Army say how much you paid for a Lima model?
I don't have that data either, but we'd be happy to provide that for you.
That and how much the Mike model cost?
Yes, sir.
We also noted that, I believe it's in the chairman's, or the group chairman's report, and I'm going to just cite it a of where the probe would go?
That was before my time, but I would believe so, yes.
And you earlier said that that was technology, I guess, in the 70s at the time that it was decided, right? Before you had flow test and other type of testing?
That is correct.
Have you not reevaluated that to test to determine if a design change should occur now that you have new methods?
No. Again, there's been no further requirements for any different.
No, I'm not asking about a requirement. Has Sikorsky, now that it has additional ways to test, maybe went back and looked at its aircraft and said, we know better things, we should suggest a change in where these pitot tubes go?
No.
Any reason why?
As I stated before, when you consider there's limited real estate on that aircraft where these could be put, and other operational considerations. So again, austere landing conditions, worrying about damage to their probes, debris impacting the pitot or static ports. The other devices on the aircraft, which would limit separate static ports like what was shown in the presentation. So again, limited areas and no identified need for different performance.
We'll keep going. All right. While I am asking this question, can Mr. Fuchs, can you pull up, I think we sent it to you, 7 Helo H Appendix A, Table A1. Before I ask that question, though, for the transponder, I just want to go back to the, well, actually, before I go to the transponder, you said, Mr. Rosengren, you had said possibly a safety alert in September or some sort of alert, correct?
Yes, ma'am. We could send out an aviation safety action message that would go out to the fleet.
Okay. And then when is the first chance for it to go in the manual?
So the manual goes through a 2028 process, so that would begin In lieu of going into the manual, we would put it immediately in the airworthiness release that would go fleet-wide.
Okay, but manual, that update begins in 2028.
So, I'm sorry, 2028 is the form that is submitted to make an operator's manual change, not the calendar year 2028.
Okay. But 2028.
No, ma'am.
Okay, please be very clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Alert manual.
So manual, there's a process that uses a Form 2028. And that Form 2028, if it's determined it needs to go into the operator's manual, we would submit that by the September 15th timeline. When it goes into the process of upgrading an operator's manual, that I can't speak to the specifics. I can get you the specific timelines of when an operator's manual would be updated.
Thank you very much.
I apologize for the confusion.
No, that's okay. Transponder, let's say you're at 260 or 270 feet, what would DCA tower see?
So, ma'am, at 260 feet, the tower should see 300.
Great.
But they get pressure altitude as opposed to what the pilot sees.
Yeah.
But
And
this-
230 or 240?
It should be 200.
Okay.
But there's a plus or minus 40 around the midpoint.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Appendix A, Brian, if you can pull that up real quick. So we have a compilation of essentially error allowances. 2 in the static system, 1, 2, 3 barometric altimeter, altimeter encoder, well, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different standards for the barometric altimeter. We've got the ESSS, we've got a clean configuration of the Lima. Are any of these additive?
Yes, ma'am. Some are additive and some are not, the way the table's laid out. So, for example, the encoder is not part of what the pilot sees. So that's not additive, but there are the instrument errors. The errors inside the instrument tend to be random, and they can combine. But so, for example, if you had a 30-foot scale error and a 25-foot barometric setting scale error, you would combine those through a method called the root sum of squares, and you would get roughly that's a 39-foot expected error range.
And
So some of them are additive. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. For what the pilot is seeing, are any of these additive?
Yes, ma'am. So the instrument errors, and those are the ones you're verifying on the ground when you do the pre-flight check or when you do the pedostatic check. Then you have to, when you take off in flight at a particular flight condition, you have a position error, a static position error, and those are additive. They can be different, so one can be positive and one can be negative, and they can cancel each other out, or they can add to each other, but they are additive.
Okay, and does it depend, could it be different by helicopter, or is that fleet-wide?
Yeah, ma'am. So the instrument error would be different by altimeter. So the
By
right side and the
altimeter.
left side altimeter could have different instrument errors. It's just a random, it's a mechanical error inside the device. But the position error, so for example, the position error at a particular airspeed for a particular flight condition is the same for all the helicopters.
Okay, thank you very much. I will ask Member Graham next. Member Inman.
Mr. Rosenberg, is your department or your agency, are you responsible for all updates in regard to even maintenance, or is it just flight standards?
So my organization is the Utility Helicopter Project Office, and so we're responsible for acquiring new Blackhawk helicopters, and then we coordinate with our life cycle management program, the AMCOM, Aviation Missile Command, on the sustainment of the aircraft. And so we do not have maintenance standards that we own. We're an acquisition organization, not an operational organization. if that
So you
makes
buy
sense.
stuff, you don't use it?
So we buy stuff, and then we work with our sister commands to make sure that it's used in accordance with the acquirer's maintenance procedures.
Okay, so you're in charge of acquisitions, is that right?
Yeah, so we're part of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for the Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology. And so we are the acquisition arm of the Army.
So just help me understand this then. Why does the acquisitions department issue airworthiness directives?
So the acquisition, we do not. We get them from our independent airworthiness organization. So AMCOM.
You keep pointing to the gentleman to the
I'm sorry.
right.
So Mr. Bradham is my chief airworthiness engineer. So
But he reports to you, right?
He does not, no, sir. He's
No, sir. Just for clarification, sir, I'm the chief airworthiness engineer, and I work in Futures Command in the Combat Capabilities Development Command Aviation and Missile Center in a group called the Systems Readiness Directorate. So Army Airworthiness Authority is delegated from the commander of Aviation and Missile Command to the director of the Systems Readiness Directorate. So I report through Futures Command, not through the
My
program.
apologies. I thought earlier in the testimony you said my bosses and you pointed to the left.
Oh,
So often the acquisition, we will task them to give us independent recommendations. That's probably why the gesture might have been that way. So when I tasked Mr. Bradham's organization to give me a recommendation, that was probably, if I recall, maybe.
Have you tasked his organization to give you any other recommendations regarding this accident?
Many, yes, sir.
What were they?
I'd have to go through the records. I'd be happy to provide you all the taskings we've done. I believe we've shown.
Are there a lot of tasks, a few tasks, 2 tasks?
There's many tasks. When Mr. Parker would make a recommendation, we would funnel it through our program executive officer, General Phillips, and then we'd make sure we get all the requests from this acts investigation, give it highest priority, and make sure that we get it tasked and recorded per saving the records for this investigation.
Okay. Will you be on another panel, Mr. Rosenberg?
No, sir, but I'll be here all week.
You think? Okay. I'm going to be done for.
Well, okay. I have a few just that I want to make sure I get back to. For Sikorsky, what's the prime item developments? What is a prime item development specification?
That is the document which, with the government, conveyed its requirements to us.
Okay, and when you're doing testing and you certify your, it goes through design and certification, correct? Your helicopters?
It's designed, and then we provide the reports. Ultimately, the
Okay.
Army has airworthiness ownership.
And so the documents you provided, does it include all these allowable allowances for errors?
The report that we've cited to the investigative team identifies the error curves for altitude, yes.
The report, and that was provided to the Army?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, so my question is, was FAA aware of any of this? Or the testing that was done, was that a surprise to the FAA of what was done and what the outcome was?
I do not know.
Oh, I'm not asking
Oh,
you.
sorry.
I'm actually asking the FAA.
Which
You should not answer that question.
which testing are you referring to?
The tests that were done on May 15th on the formation flight.
And
I'm sorry, let me clear. The report I was talking about was from
Yeah,
1983.
I know.
Okay.
I'm not, this is a totally different question. I'm getting a few of my straggler questions here.
yeah, so I'm familiar with those reports that came out of the May 15th battalion flight tests. I did not have access to any of the, I'll say, the original Sikorsky data to form any opinion on the results.
Okay, thank you. Member Graham. Member Inman.
Yeah, I'd just like to go back to Mrs. Lewis. I think all the board members were offered, and I believe we all took the opportunity to do a simulation in the Lima or the Mike model and to wear night vision goggles. And it was very apparent as we were doing that, the instructor pilots next to us were talking us through what they would see. So we've actually seen the entire route, which is pretty disturbing whenever you look at it that way. My question to you is, as they were talking to us and we're looking through night vision goggles, you have to look out of the night vision goggles, if I'm correct, to be able to check your altitude?
Yes, that would be correct.
And earlier you said that you'd be checking your radar altimeter and your baro altimeter if you're at an MSL of 200?
Yes.
Is it a complicated task to be looking at two separate altimeter readings while at the same time using night vision goggles that prohibit your view by 40 degrees? And an iPad, sorry, that has ForeFlight along with an ADSB receiver that's remote?
Sir, in that situation at that low altitude, I would not be referencing an iPad. I would have that put away, but I mean, it does take some practice, some experience to get used to cross-checking the instruments while flying goggles at a low altitude.
How much?
Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to go back to the technical panel to see if they have other questions. And then my understanding is, because I'm getting texts from the team, that there are some party questions. So I want to make sure we are within schedule, so I want to make sure everybody's questions are answered. So we'll go back to technical team, then we'll come back to the parties.
This question's for Mr. Rosengren. Previously with the flight data recorder, you had mentioned that when the data is downloaded, it's looked for reasonableness. Is there a standard for reasonableness with the FDR data?
So just for clarification, we don't download the FDR data. We download the HUMS data, which is in the data card, but they come from the same remote data concentrator, so we're confident that they're similar, minus a few recording rate differences in hertz. So we download the HUMS data. I'm not aware of any standards. I can get back to you if I find anything different. One thing does come to mind. So the three parts that I did mention, there are some vibration standards we looked for to make sure that those three parts aren't exceeded. But outside of those three parts that we track, I don't know of any particular standards we use.
Okay, we'd appreciate it if you could get us that information, and particularly if the pressure altitude data is looked for, and if there's a standard for what's considered reasonable for that parameter. Jumping a bit, my next question is for Mrs. Lewis. This is a scenario-based one, based on what the chairwoman asked about flying over the Potomac River route. If you had a route ceiling of about 200 feet, and you were to look at your barometric altimeter and see about 160 feet, but then saw on your radar altimeter about 280 feet, how would you triage that situation in your experience?
In my experience, so if the barometric altimeter is reading 160 feet, you're saying, and the radar altimeter is reading significantly higher than that. I would still, my primary concern on the MSL route would be staying below the 200 feet. And I would definitely, take note of that and maybe write the aircraft up for some, maintenance action. But at that particular time, I would, as long as there was nothing wrong with the aircraft before we took off as far as the field elevation and the barometric altimeter, I would, continue to assume that I was below that 200-foot MSL.
Thank you. And then my last follow-up question is, I think Mr. Bradham would be best suited, but Mr. Rosengren can chime in as well. Based on the discussions today for the answers that we've received today.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. Garrett Weimer here. Want to let you know the jury is coming in. It appears we have a verdict in the Lawrence Dority trial. Let's listen in.
All right, go ahead and have a seat. State recognize the presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense recognize the presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, has the jury reached a unanimous verdict? Yes. All right, if you'll go ahead and hand the verdict forms to the court deputy for me. All right, the verdict forms are in order. Madam Clerk, if you'll go ahead and please read the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the Ninth Judicial Circuit, in and for Orange County, Florida, the state of Florida versus Lawrence Dority, case number 2022, CF 5250. Verdict as to count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder as charged in the information. So say we all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, on this 30th day of July. Responsible person. Special finding as to count 1. If you found the defendant guilty of second-degree murder, you must then answer the following question. We, the jury, find that the defendant did, during the commission of the crime, actually possess a firearm. So say we all, this 30th day of July, 2025, at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, sign the foreperson. Special finding as to count 1. If you found the defendant guilty of second-degree murder, you must then answer the following question. We, the jury, find that the defendant did, during the commission of the crime, discharge a firearm. So say we all, this 30th day of July, 2025, at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, sign the foreperson. Special finding, if you found the defendant guilty of second-degree murder, you must then answer the following question. We, the jury, find that the defendant did, during the commission of the crime, due to the discharge of a firearm, cause the death to Adreian Payne. Special finding, if you found the defendant guilty of second-degree murder or manslaughter, lesser included crime, you must then answer the following question. We, the jury, find that during the commission of the crime, a firearm was personally carried, displayed, used, threatened to be used, or attempted to be used. So say we all, this 30th day of July, 2025, at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, sign the foreperson.
Either party wish to have the jury polled?
The state does not.
Defense does, Your Honor.
Madam Clerk, if you'll poll the jurors for me, please.
Juror number 902, is this your true and accurate verdict? Is this your true and accurate verdict? Juror number 558, is this your true and accurate verdict? Juror number 206, is this your true and accurate verdict? Juror number 4217, is this your true and accurate verdict? Juror number 484, is this your true and accurate verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 693, is this your true and accurate verdict? Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have one final instruction for you, and that is your instruction upon discharge. I do wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges that you enjoy as jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their own private affairs as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives each of you a unique privilege not to speak about your jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request may come from those who are simply curious or from those who may seek to find fault with you, and it'll be up to each one of you individually to decide whether you wish to discuss your jury work with anyone or not, okay? I know that it's been a couple of days and it's been an inconvenience to you to come over here and give of your time, but it is very important to our system of justice and very important part of being an American citizen that we have jurors like you come in and decide these cases for us. For your time here the last 3 days, I do thank you for the efforts that you have put in and the work that you have done. If any of you all need an excuse for work, we will generate that for you that indicates that you have been here for the last 3 days. With that said, that will conclude your jury service in this case. With our sincere thanks, you should not get another summons for at least 1 year from today's date, okay? All right, thank you. All right, Spencer. All right, have a seat. All right, is there any legal reason why we can't proceed to sentencing at this point?
Your Honor, I don't know if the defense is asking for a PSI or asking for sentencing.
Is he entitled to a pre-sentence investigation?
He's not a convicted felon.
He has a prior dealing in stolen property that he's on probation for?
I'm not sure if he's adjudicated guilty on that. I looked at it, he was a withhold adjudication.
I understand it was a plea of no contest and it was a withhold of adjudication. Have you all reviewed Florida Statutes 921.231?
Not recently, Your Honor. Let's do that now.
Line 21.31 subsection 1 with respect to pre-sentence investigation reports says that any circuit court of the state when the defendant in a criminal case has been found guilty or has entered a plea of nolo contendere or guilty, so a nolo plea previously would count as a conviction, may refer the case to a Department of Corrections for a pre-sentence investigation. So a nolo plea previously doesn't entitle him to a pre-sentence investigation. The state objection to their request?
I don't have an objection, Your Honor. It's in your discretion.
And the defense is requesting one?
Yes, Your Honor.
What I'll do is I'll go ahead and request the PSI so I can get some additional information. How much time do they normally take for those 30 days? I'll go ahead and order a PSI at this point. We'll set sentencing for August 29th, which is a Friday, at 11 a.m. In the meantime, Mr. Dority will be remanded to the custody of the Orange County Sheriff's Office pending sentencing. Anything further from the state?
Nothing further from the state.
Defense?
No, Your Honor. Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll be in recess.
You see Lawrence Dority there in his suit, being remanded into custody. Deputies putting handcuffs around his wrist there. Sentencing scheduled for August 29th. You heard the defense attorney requesting a pre-sentence investigation, potentially looking for any sort of factors that could impact that. You could hear some crying, some sobbing, it sounded like, in the background of the gallery there, in the aftermath of the announcement of the verdict being read. Unanimous verdict of guilty of second-degree murder. You can see some of the emotions on the people in the gallery there. There is the girlfriend of Adreian Payne, who testified yesterday and had her story called into question by Lawrence Dority, who testified later, by the defense attorney in his closing statements as well. But the jury took about an hour and 40 minutes, hour and a half, hour 40 minutes to return that verdict. They began their deliberations shortly after 11:07, when the jury retired to begin those deliberations. We did hear a question from the jury about an hour later. They had a question about the time the officer arrived at the scene, and then another 45 minutes or so when that verdict was read. You see family members, loved ones who are still in the gallery there. Obviously going through a lot of emotions, as they have over the past 3 years since Adreian Payne was killed in May of 2022. And just a moment ago, we saw Lawrence Dority remanded into custody. The prosecutor there making the argument earlier today that this was not self-defense, as the defense had argued. They were saying that this, under Florida Stand Your Ground law, that this was a justifiable homicide, and the jury disagreeing with that. Now we wait to see what the sentence might be for Lawrence Dority, and you can see some of those emotions catching up with Tara Walker. I will note that Dority was charged with second-degree murder. He could have been convicted of that. He could have also been convicted on a lesser charge of manslaughter, or the jury could have come back and found this as a justifiable homicide. But again, it took them only about an hour and a half or so to return that verdict guilty of second-degree murder. Looks like those loved ones of Adreian Payne now being escorted out of the courtroom here. The prosecutor following behind, and we will likely lose our court feed here in just a moment. But we do want to let you know that we will have streaming coverage of that hearing coming up on August 29th again, where we expect to learn more about his sentence and the penalty Lawrence Dority could face. You also see on your screen there the live picture from Kissimmee, as live pictures from Sky Fox here. Our aerials showing this small Cessna plane that made an emergency landing on Highway 1792, US 1792 in Osceola County. You can see a cruiser there with a lane blocked off. The right lane is blocked while they try to figure out what's going on, trying to maybe get that plane out of the way. So certainly something to be aware of if you're going to be driving through that area. We are going to take a break here on Fox Local, but we'll be right back with more coverage in just a couple of minutes.
waiting 3 years for this, and I'm just glad that it's been done and the jury did their duty because we needed to get this menace off the streets, and I'm glad it's gone. Thank you.
The mother of Adreian.
Antoine Payne, Antiwan Payne.
Anybody else want to say something?
This is the mother of Adreian. I mean, this is the mother of his child, and she was there that night, and she got justice.
Would you like to talk to us, please?
Okay, but we did God always has the final answer.
Heard a brief statement there from the brother of Adreian Payne, the former Orlando Magic player who was shot and killed back in May of 2022. He was talking about how he is glad that justice has been served. He said it took a while to get here, but certainly thankful for this verdict. Also heard similar sentiments echoed by, you saw Tara Walker there, the girlfriend of Adreian Payne, and some others as well. So just a very brief reaction there as they left the courtroom. Hoping to hear more from the prosecutor here shortly. If he comes out of the courtroom here, we will keep monitoring this feed for that. In the meantime, we will go ahead and want to get you back to this NTSB hearing where they're continuing to discuss the DC midair collision that happened back in January, and we'll keep monitoring the feed to see if there's any other reaction following the conviction of Lawrence Dority on a charge of second-degree murder.
Speed of that roughly is a temperature effect. But so for those aircraft, if you take those standards, and I apologize, I'm flipping through my notes to get the exact numbers on the aircraft, but I have them for all the aircraft on that test. So for example, ma'am, so for aircraft number 1, it was 45 feet low on the ground. The position error adds 7 feet low.